Jen and Carolyn.
Hey everybody.
Hey Jen.
How you feeling today?
I actually feel really good.
Yeah.
Got some good sleep.
Good.
Very hydrated.
Those
Went
are
to
all
a
good
wonderful supportive group of women yesterday. Strong Her Collective. So
That'll definitely put some wind in your sails.
yeah, women are cool.
We are pretty dope.
when we're being nice to each other.
Yes.
I've definitely been in situations where we're not so cool.
Yes, but that's usually because of insecurity and things people have done to us.
Yeah.
Hurt people.
Or there's a man in the room that we're all vibing for.
Oh, jeez.
Or a woman.
Evolution! But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Well, sorta. We're going to be talking about whether or not this planet can be saved.
Oh, good
Let's
Lord.
white savior this planet up. But no, I think, and maybe it's just because I'm a parent, of all the fights that seem insurmountable, saving the planet it's up there. And, there's climate change deniers and corporate greed and general, freaking apathy experienced by the everyday person that really make this fight to preserve our precious planet seem kind of unwinnable. And as beaten down, I think, as we sometimes feel, I'm not so sure the demise of the earth is a foregone conclusion. So we're gonna rap about it today, and we're hoping to give you all some hope. And I promise to think about these things every time I feel hopeless.
It's hard not to think about this, though.
Yeah.
I think about this constantly.
Yeah, I wonder if the child that I brought into this world is going to be here when there's a full and complete decline of civilization and the planet as we know it.
If I'm being honest, I think you and I were talking about this, half of the reason why I'm afraid to have a child, other than my own incapability, is, thank you, I would worry what I'm giving, again, the legacy that we're leaving them. I think about that.
Yeah. Well, there's already so many things to worry about when it comes to your child. And I'm sorry, that's what you do. When you're a parent, you worry. And there are so many threats and challenges, but the potential and complete total destruction of the planet is a big one.
I just want us to worry about aliens. Remember when we just worried about them?
Right? I know. And what's his face said, it was either Carl Sagan or Stephen Hawking said, if aliens come here, it is not going to be cool. They are not friendly. They are like
Wait,
us.
really?
Yeah, he said they're in search of resources, and they will, the way that we've taken it from others, they will take it from us by force and by eradication. Because what would they need us for? They just want our resources.
I mean, that kind of feels validating for some of the anger. I'm like, yeah, go aliens.
I'm like, are you sure you're not human? Yeah. The other people, the
what about
people.
E.T.? I want Steven Spielberg aliens.
I just want my aliens to eat Reese's Pieces and give life to dead plants and shit and hang out with little Drew Barrymore. That's the kind of aliens I want, man. But again, not here to talk about that.
Yeah.
So, we've kind of come to the conclusion, and I hope many of you have, that when it comes to reversing the damage that humans have done to the planet, we've all felt hopeless. But, I'm really trying to do this more and more every day, alter my mindset and my habits.
Yeah.
And since I've started doing that even more, beyond just the composting and the recycling, recycling is kind of a farce. I'm not going to get into that, but I think it's 10% of post-consumer recyclables or plastics are actually recyclable. It's fucked up. And recycling was actually created by the plastic companies.
Yes, I didn't know that.
Look into it, folks. It's dirty, but I still recycle. But it's the small changes beyond that. And I think if everyone made small changes, we could really put a dent in this destruction.
I think so too.
Yeah, I do. So, Carolyn,
little at a time.
Yeah, we have about 30 years, according to the experts, to really turn this shit around.
Really?
We're done.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna say that's a lot shorter than I thought.
It's either 30 years or 2030. I hope it's 30 years. I can't remember. I should know, but yeah, it's definitely coming quickly.
Well, within our lifetime, it feels more, you feel the heat, you feel all the things. That's happened.
Things
so
have
that's
changed
true.
significantly since we were kids. And let me just go on record and say any moron who conflates climate and weather, you need to ask somebody, preferably with a fucking PhD or an MD, because you don't know anything with your high school, like, science education, buddy.
I feel like there's a story behind that.
There's a lot of stories behind that. We're not going to get into that. So, Carolyn, what's your favorite green habit?
Well, like we were talking about, it's fair to say that you and I basically came of age in the recycle, reduce, reuse decade.
Bette Midler will come for you.
And being called a fucking litter bug was playground death.
Yeah.
You did not want to be called a litter bug.
No.
You know, honestly, this has been a fun podcast to work on because I think this is making me face some realities. I try not to make a ton of trash.
Yes.
I really try to compost. I try and buy in bulk. I try to go to places. You know, we live in the Bay Area. I try to go to Berkeley, Bowl, Rainbow, Farmers Market. I try to, at least within my food consumption and how I purchase, not contribute more to. You know, but like I said, my privileged ass in the Bay Area can do that. I don't think it's that hard.
Right.
You know, but I still use a lot of products and things that I shop at places and get things from places where I know the carbon footprint is probably a lot higher.
Yes, for sure. And when we are buying the organic grass-fed things, we do recognize that there's a premium on this and not everybody can afford this. And folks who are in survival mode, like I was when I was growing up, like my mom always made healthy food. Yeah. But it was, you know, Foster Farms and, you know, all of the naughty stuff, right? Yeah. Pumped full of antibiotics and because you're trying to survive.
Well, and the way I look at it and the way I make sense of the expense in my mind is I'm hopefully saving on medical expenses later. Right? Yeah. Mostly it's food choices and being able, we live in an area where I'm able to go to the farm and literally buy my eggs from that farm.
Totally.
And so, yes, it is more expensive, but I feel better about the purchase and I feel better about, okay, this is going to be helping me. And so it feels better at least.
Yeah, no. And food and the way we justify it is we don't go out as much anymore. Yeah. I cook 5 days a week. Yeah. So the food that I'm eating and that my family's eating, I want to make sure that it's healthy and it's going to sustain us. And just by making small changes, if you are in this income bracket, like making small changes, you can eat better food.
Because there was a time when it was top ramen and merch and
you ate whatever you could get.
I made it work.
Right? When you have money for one meal a day, it's going to be the most fat, like high caloric meal to keep you sustained for as long as possible. And I've been there. So
what are yours?
Mine is composting. And I really love composting. We compost friggin' everything. My husband is a compost.
He's really good. Yeah. He'll bring things home too. Like if there's, that's what I love was sometimes if there's not a receptacle for him, I'm like, well, and he'll bring it home. Like that's fucking dedication.
Oh yeah. He's very dedicated. And you know, after watching Kiss the Ground, which my boy,
have to see this.
Ian Somerhalder, love you buddy. He and a bunch of other celebrities, were talking about regenerative soil practices and keeping the soil healthy is key. And I honestly had no idea how integral that was to the ecosystem and how by changing our soil practices, we can alter climate change and the impact on our planet. So watch this film, do it now. He's come out with he and everybody else have come out with a second installment, Common Ground. But surprise, when I saw Ian speak last month, he was saying, we can't get a streaming service to carry it because corporations don't like the message.
And Jen, tell everyone who Ian is if they don't know.
Ian Somerhalder played Damon in The Vampire Diaries, but he's
beautiful.
He is a beautiful person.
He looks like Rob Lowe, but he's also like a nice person.
Oh my God.
Rob Lowe's nice.
Beautiful human. Yeah, you've met Rob Lowe. But Ian is a wonderful person. He actually has largely left Hollywood and is now into healthy pursuits and, you know, trying to save the planet and lives on a farm and shit.
Use your celebrity for good.
Yes, absolutely. Meet your heroes when they're Ian Somerhalder. So we're going to start with this episode with the bad, but I promise we're going to leave you feeling hopeful and happy. At least that's our goal.
But we're going to get real pissed off first because we're Jen and Carolyn.
Yeah, we are. We're already, our voices are already elevating.
So shaking.
Again, here we go. And I talked about this earlier. This is for all you morons who think that either climate change isn't real or worse, conflate weather with climate change. Here are some facts from NASA. NASA doesn't get any smarter than that. While Earth's climate has changed throughout its history, the current warming is happening at a rate not seen in the past 10,000 years. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, since systematic scientific assessments began in the 1970s, the influence of human activity on the warming of the climate system has evolved from theory to established fact.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And there's, they use science to determine these things. You don't have to necessarily have walked the earth 10,000 years ago to know what was going on Earth 10,000 years ago. That's what science was for. So they talk about ice cores. So ice cores drawn from Greenland, Antarctica, I can never say that right, and tropical mountain glaciers show that Earth's climate responds to changes in greenhouse gas levels. Ancient evidence can also be seen in tree rings, ocean sediments, coral reefs, and layers of sedimentary rock. This ancient or paleoclimate evidence reveals that current warming is occurring roughly 10 times faster than the average rate of warming after an ice age, and carbon dioxide from human activities is increasing about 250 times faster than it did from natural sources after the last ice age. All right? Cool. So this is from an what is it?
Ecotricity?
Ecotricity, bro. An ecotricity article. So climate change could, we're fucked. Here it is. Climate change could be irreversible by 2030. Awesome. That's right around the corner, guys. Really, 6 years. We don't have a lot of time. Greenhouse gas levels are at an all-time high. The burning of fossil fuels, emission from transports, and the environmental impact of intensive farming have all contributed to high levels of CO2 in our atmosphere. Okay? Moving ahead, so more than 1 million species is going to face extinction, with the expected rate of species extinction
they're already happening.
5 species a year. Yeah. We're currently losing up to 10,000 times the normal rate. That means that dozens of species, they're going extinct every single day. Climate change is actually creating a refugee crisis. There are people who have had to leave their homes because of flooding, crazy heat, name it. And, as global temperatures increase, millions of people, they're going to have to flee from their homes to avoid the impact of drought and extreme storms.
And then with that, malnutrition.
Yes, totally. You can't, and that's when you watch Kiss the Ground, they talk about how we have depleted the soil of nutrients to such an extent, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit in this. We're not reaping the same yield that we used to, say, 40 years ago through farming, because we're tilling the soil and we're doing all these terrible practices that are taking, the good things out of the soil that we so desperately need, not just for our food, but for our atmosphere. Fewer trees mean more carbon dioxide, which is not good for us in mass quantities.
The rainforest is dying.
The rainforest is dying, bro. McDonald's is clearing out the rainforest in Brazil.
We need that Julia chick to go back up in a tree.
Yeah, dude, go sit in a tree.
Dude, let's go sit in a tree.
We should do it.
What tree would we sit in?
Sit in a tree.
Let's go up and sit on the cross.
This sounds good in theory. You gotta ask my boy Shannon. They'll tell you, man. They did tree sitting when they were in their 20s.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of tree sitting.
You're gonna see the two of us sitting on some tree or something on Mount Tam somewhere.
We're way too uppity for that shit. So, clearly, all of this is dire.
Yeah.
And our planet is in serious peril. And we're not going to waste our time trying to convert climate change deniers, especially since we couldn't imagine any of them listen to our show. Instead, the focus is on us.
Yeah.
Those who believe but feel helpless to make any change. So, Carolyn, from a psychological perspective, because I've clearly talked enough, can you discuss the apathy and indifference that many of us feel when it comes to the fate of our planet?
Have you heard of psychic numbing?
That sounds familiar.
Okay.
Tell me more.
Well, it's a psychological phenomenon. It's known as psychic numbing. And it's the idea that the more we hear the data, the less we care. Now, I don't know. For me, I have a twofold feeling about this. Because it makes me more data data is interesting to me.
We could have such a hard on for data on this show.
Lisa Jamora, who's has a podcast and is a child psychologist, and I love her books. I'll use her phrase, we're data nerds.
Okay.
Like data nerds.
Yep,
totally,
we are.
Right? So again, back to psychological numbing. So this comes from historical psychologist Robert J. Lifton, and he coined the term after he studied the psychological impacts of war, political violence, and thought reform on the human psyche. Thanks,
Interesting.
Wikipedia. So psychic numbing is a way a culture or society an individual, it happens individualistic too, withdraws from issues that would otherwise be too overwhelming for the human mind to comprehend. Now, you might ask, where did he figure this out? 1982 research on Hiroshima survivors describe people in a state of, shock, unable to respond rationally to the world around them. And we can experience this collectively or individualistically. So another person, whenever you look up psychic numbing, you're going to hear about a psychologist at the University of Oregon named Paul Slovic. And he's been studying psychic numbing for decades. And his research suggests that statistical numbers associated with tragedies that get larger and larger, we as humans become desensitized to them and have less of an emotional response to them. And this in turn leads us less likely to take action when it's needed to stop things like genocide, sending aid for national disasters, passing legislation, and most importantly, fighting global warming. So as I'm talking about this, Jen, what's coming up for you about the connection between trauma and psychic numbing? Maybe that's where you've heard this before.
Nazis? I'm thinking of the banality of evil. You know?
Again, if you've read Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score,
yes,
neuroscience backs up this is human behavior.
I'll take Nazis for 100.
I'll take Nazis for, well, mostly it is, but I think that would go hand in hand, that a lot of people denied the Holocaust, still do deny the Holocaust, or even weren't paying attention, and that was also publicized differently. But it's so horrible. Our brains, the average brain, can't wrap themselves around that. And why would you want to?
Yeah.
Like, even you and I are fascinated by serial killers and these things. Most people do not want this in their head.
No.
They do not want to understand this. It is beyond, they don't want to think about this.
Yeah.
So again, if you think of this from a neuroscience standpoint, it's how we survive.
Yep.
This is all happening deep in our reptilian brain, our limbic system, the fight, flight, freeze that I talk about. And it's, I can go on and on about this, but, when you look at this also from neurophysiology, these things stress us out.
Yes.
They cause a stress response, and we go through a process called habituation. And this is a really prevalent variable of the phenomenon of psychic numbing. So the more consistently you're exposed, the society or the individual, to prolonged adverse stimuli, or basically trauma in my mind, or really anything, the emotional magnitude of that stimuli, if your body had to keep reacting to that, you would probably go into dorsal vagal response, which is you shut down.
Just paralysis,
or you can no longer live.
Yeah.
And I think that's where most people have to actually protect themselves.
Yeah.
So what we're calling apathy, I think sometimes is self-protective.
That makes sense.
And so, moving ahead, we see this type of response in veterans who come back from war.
Yeah.
Survivors of rape, anyone with PTSD or complex trauma.
Yeah.
So the same way we have to dissociate from many things in life that would render us completely immobilized. Yeah. It's a way to go, well, okay, I can't wrap my head around that number. Again, 2030 is really close.
Yeah.
And I also think that sometimes when things aren't directly impacting us, we tend to, which I don't always think is intentional, but we can't look at it. I'm classic with this with the news. It hurts me to look at it.
I get it.
And there's too many other things that I'm having to pay attention to.
Yeah.
But I did find a BBC article titled "What Makes People Stop Caring," and it was written actually to discuss apathy that occurred during mass deaths during COVID. But I felt that there were some points that kind of fit. So Melissa Finucane, a senior behavior scientist and policy think tank at Rand Corporation. She studied decision-making and risk assessment. She talks about this from an evolutionary perspective, again, that if it's not going to kill us immediately, we don't want to deal. Okay. It's not directly in my path. Yep. There's not an actual, it's not happening to me. And I think this is very fucking American. Yeah. But I would question, again, these refugees are fleeing. I think it's pretty fucking apparent to them. Yeah. But we become overwhelmed. You've heard of compassion fatigue. I think we get burnt out also from the intensity of media that's being talked about to us. Yep. So like I said, that number 2030, I haven't heard that. Yeah. That's new to me. And probably because I've been like, I can't listen to this right now. I'm doing my part. I don't know what else to say. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think that, again, science and data will talk.
That was really helpful. And I just want to make sure that you know that the RAND Corporation is a bit dirty.
Oh, no, really?
So I was like, why do I know this? So the RAND Corporation is the Paramilitary Academy of the United States Strategic Thinking. Achieving a remarkable degree of interdisciplinary research, the RAND Corporation does the basic thinking behind the weapons systems, the procurement policies, and the global strategy of the United States.
Well, then, Melissa, you would know why we are avoiding these things. Thank you, Jen, for the fact check on that.
Apparently, RAND Corporation has been involved in controversial issues, and its reports, recommendations, and influence has been the subject of extensive public debate and controversy. Among these have been Cold War and potential nuclear conflict. Neat! But who knew? I always think Ayn Rand or Ayn Rand, whatever that woman was, Atlas Shrugged, terrible pro-capitalist propaganda. Anyway.
It takes two.
I digress, man.
No, thank you for telling me. I didn't know that.
But what that person is saying is still relevant, just because
she's just a horrible human.
She just works for a horrible branch or sub-branch of the U.S.
She's probably a really nice person.
Who knows? She's probably engaging in psychic numbing to be able to continue to do her job, because I bet it pays.
She's probably trying to pay off her student loans.
Yeah, aren't we all? Right? Okay, and that brings me. Next episode will likely be on student loans.
Well, no, if the world's ending in 2030, I'm not fucking with this shit.
No, why pay it back? Right?
That's the only good thing I can think of about climate change.
We are debt free. Nobody cares. I'm living on a raft and eating bugs and shit. Like, nobody cares if I pay my credit card debt or my student loan debt. Anyway, we're really going off book here. So let's put the blame where I think it belongs, shall we? And that's really on corporations and shifty ass politics.
Boo!
Yeah, boo. Let's talk about oil and gas first. So this is from a Guardian article. Called Just 100 Companies Responsible for 71% of Global Emissions, study says. Traditionally, large-scale greenhouse gas emissions data is collected at a national level, but this report focuses on fossil fuel producers. Okay, so the report found that more than half of global industrial emissions since 1988, the year the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was established, can be traced to just 25 corporate and state-owned entities. Here's some of the big ones. ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, and Chevron are identified as among the highest emitting investor-owned companies since 1988.
Weird.
Okay. We all know oil and gas is a problem in terms of exacerbating climate change, right? And depleting the ozone.
And politics and war.
Right. Those things too. But food, we really need to focus on food production and where most of our food comes from and how the production of that food is directly contributing to climate change and environmental degradation. So this is from an Our World in Data article. Data!
Yay!
Agriculture has a significant environmental impact in 3 ways. Whoops, I scrolled too fast. First, it requires... I'm all fired up, dog. First, it requires large amounts of fresh water, which can cause significant environmental pressures. In regions with water stress. And when we're living in an environment where drought is prevalent, we're fucked.
Yeah.
It needs water as input and pollutes rivers, lakes, and oceans by releasing nutrients, okay? It is a crucial driver of climate change, responsible for around 1/4 of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Whoa. Finally, agriculture has a massive impact on the world's environment due to its enormous land use. Half of the world's habitable land is used for agriculture. That's insane.
That's insane.
Half, which I understand. We've got a lot of people. We've got to feed them, but we can do it in a different and a better way. And we're going to talk more about that too. So food production accounts for over 1/4, 26% of global greenhouse emissions. Half of the world's habitable land, I already said that. Okay, 70% of global fresh water withdraws are used for agriculture. That's a crazy amount of water.
And people don't have fresh drinking water.
Yeah, it's true. And that's being increasingly privatized. Hello, Nestle. I see you. 78% of global ocean and fresh water. Okay, here's a weird
That's a cool word.
Eutrophication is caused by okay. So
what the hell does that mean?
Now we're gonna know what it is. It's the pollution of waterways with nutrient-rich water. Interesting. 94%, bless you, of non-human mammal biomass is livestock. This means livestock outweigh wild mammals by a factor of 15 to 1.4. This share is 97% when only land-based mammals are included. So, I mean, it's pretty crazy when we think about livestock, agriculture, water use, the methane that's produced by cows, which actually has...
And their waste alone that we don't know what to do with.
Yes.
And you look at the overhead of these properties and I cannot eat meat after watching that.
Yeah.
It's
really hard.
Places,
and I remember in college, one of my favorite books was called A Civil Action. And there was a movie made with, I think John Travolta was in it anyway. But it's about this lawyer who basically loses everything because there's this town, I think it's in upstate New York, if I remember correctly. And their waterway was polluted by a tannery, a place that processed cowhides.
Yeah.
Because the chemicals were getting into the waterway and people were developing cancer. Children were dying. People were getting like rashes. It was insane. And I can't remember if they ultimately ended up winning, but I remember feeling really depressed at the end of the book. So maybe they didn't win this.
It's not an Aaron Brockovich.
No,
damn
I don't think it had a feel good ending, but I hope it did. Maybe I'm not remembering correctly. Reach out to me, guys. So, we obviously understand that the world has a massive population, like I said, and that people need food, but we could be doing things in a way that doesn't have the impact on the environment. But corporate greed is what fucks it all up.
Yeah.
So one solution I referenced, Kiss the Ground, is this regenerative agriculture, which according to the Nature Conservancy is an approach to growing food that seeks to actively restore nature in the process. For instance, farmers using regenerative practices that nurture living soil give back resources to nature, like water, nutrients, and biodiversity, so the land can continue producing year after year. Many of these methods help stabilize our climate, and some can grow more food than conventional farming while using fewer resources. I'm not a scientist, right? But that's why I look to scientists. I'm not even a farmer. That's why I look to scientists and farmers who can tell me why this works, why this is a better system. And I'll say this, what we're doing isn't working. We all know that. Not only isn't it working for people and the planet, but it ain't even working for the people who are doing this, because this is what I alluded to earlier, this statistic. Research shows that despite agricultural achievements of the past 60 years, global farming productivity is 21% lower than it could have been without climate change. So they're in essence digging their own grave. They're living for the now. How can I make money now? They're not even thinking about next year and whether or not the soil where they've planted this year's poultry harvest will even be able to give host to next year's, probably even smaller harvest based on the trends. So, Carolyn, I don't know.
Oh, I want to cry.
I know. Don't cry. There's going to be hope. It's obvious to us, I think, and probably a lot of our listeners, that the people who run these corporations, they're really focused on, like I said, short-term gain rather than long-term. And I don't think they're dumb or I'm hoping they're not even necessarily evil. I don't think they think climate change is really a hoax. Can you maybe tell us about psychologically how people can know that what they're doing is not good, but justify what they're doing?
I mean, I think we've talked about this in other... Yes, I can.
Sweet.
I'm going to go to Psychology.
I need to understand.
Psychology Today for this. A wonderful article we found called 6 Common Ways People Justify Unethical Behavior. And we've talked about this before in episodes where we've talked about addiction, or we've talked about basically anything you do that, again, cognitive dissonance, just ways that we justify something that we know isn't good for us or good for the greater good, but we do it anyway in the moment. And so, I'm going to pick a couple of these, but a lot of us live in that nuance of viewing this behavior as a gray area.
Yeah.
So I think, like you said, it's while we can see this as a human rights violation, to me, it's an animal rights violation. It's climate change, all the things. Yeah. You can avoid that culpability if you don't see yourself morally, if you're morally ambiguous, right? So that one's very simplistic.
Well, is it really wrong? And, like Monsanto, you're carrying your fuck Monsanto bag.
I am.
And there are tons of people out there who say, hey, it's actually helping us produce more food. And we're able to, help developing countries who might have a food shortage, for instance, because we've got these genetically modified crops and we can make more and do more. And it's like,
that's cognitive dissonance at its best. And I think, again, it's corporate and it's how it's being packaged and how it's being sold. Yes, you are.
Right.
And look at what you're doing to the insect population. Look at what you're doing to the soil. Look at what you're doing. So again, believing the behavior will benefit others.
Yep.
That's, I think, probably the biggest one that even companies that think they are doing something good in the short term, we're not looking ahead.
Yeah.
And maybe that's and again, you might even say, like, live in the now, like, don't future trip, but you got to future trip a little bit.
Well, man, have you seen like Shell and Chevron commercials lately? It's all like people doing good, like cleaning some oil off a duck. It's like, where'd that oil come from, dog?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, this is where I love my dad and his cynicism. Like, if you're having to advertise to me, you're fucking full of shit.
Yep.
I agree. Why are you needing to do that?
Yeah.
And you should be questioning those things.
Right.
So again, believing this will benefit others. We see lots of research about ways that people have what's called altruistic justification, deception for gain. Highlighting the moral credentials is another one that people do. That paradoxically, it turns out that when people are often less likely to behave in alignment with their moral values when they have demonstrated it in something called, have you heard of moral licensing?
No.
So the idea is one good deed makes people feel licensed to forgo all the other things that they're not doing.
I did my mitzvah for the day, bitch.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna go kick a puppy. Come on.
Well, but it kind of that taps into that fuck itness of us, where it's like, man, I am recycling, and I think people sometimes genuinely believe in the corporates. I don't know if I can agree with that, but genuinely believing. I think a lot of the people that work, when we find some other good ones that really come out, here's the one I think is really powerful, though. They partially come clean. Again, think of the little kid who's like, yeah, I snuck a cookie, but like they're telling you a little bit of a truth, but it's not really the whole thing. I think this is a big one that corporations do with the kind of the moral self-image. And again, I'm if you're giving back and you're doing philanthropy, that's good. Yeah. But again, you're covering up for all the things that you're doing. Yes. Here's another one I think is a big one. It's called demonizing those who have done worse. The pot calling the kettle black. Yep. Well, at least we're not this. And I think oftentimes even I do that when I'm making choices where it's like, well, yeah, but, at least I'm not buying from this place.
Yes,
at least
we rationalize it.
I'm and again, I hear this a lot too, like, well, it's giving jobs places. Yeah. It's, it's creating employment. But, and again, I personally believe in industrial sociopathy, that I really think people have a really skewed value around money and giving, as long as I'm okay. I don't really care about other people. I think that's an ingrained American
value.
It's a really shitty value, but it's how it is the blood and the horror that this country is built on.
Totally.
And I don't know.
Rugged individualism, man.
But let's go back to Robert Lifton's Psychic Numbing. Yeah. So an MIT Press reader, this is written by Kari Marie Norgaard. I really want to buy her book that came with this, but she wrote Climate Change in the Age of Numbing. And she writes, we know that our lives can end at any moment. Yet we live as though we do not know this. And Lifton calls this condition the absurdity of the double life. We live with the knowledge on one hand that we and each of us could be consumed at any moment together with everyone and everything we have ever touched or loved. And he goes on, that's a long quote, but we basically can't, we don't want to deal with the reality that threat could actually hurt us. And according to Lifton, the absurdity of the double life profoundly affects our thinking, feeling, identity, sense of empowerment, political imagination, or morality. And he wrote, if at any moment nothing might matter, who's to say that nothing matters now? Yeah. But I think we have to resist that trap because, again, what even with the trap of this kind of, the moral relativism and the industrial sociopathy, it takes away and creates from the individual.
Yes.
And it's telling people that you don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You can't change anything. It's bigger than you are. And that's where I go, and I know where that leads. It leads to me feeling, I can't beat them, join them. Yeah. It makes me apathetic, it makes me depressed, it makes me shut down, because that's what my psychology is, and that's what my body's going to do. But what if, and you brought this up, what if you start small?
Yeah.
What if you actually start and work inwards and then outwards, and you actually see yourself and your community, starting with yourself and your home and your neighborhood? What if we thought of it collectively that way? No, Carolyn is not going to change the world.
Right.
But I do believe, I get all Grateful Deady. I have a ripple effect. Yeah. There is a ripple effect. And I that is what gets me through moments where I can't manage the psychic numbing.
It's true. And the micro impacts the macro. And also oftentimes, because my background is in political science, and, people will talk to me about the frustration they feel about the political system.
Yes.
And I say, you know what? You're way too focused on Washington. Yeah. You're way too focused on what's going on at the national level. Do you know what's going on in your own backyard? Are there ways for you to get involved? Are there local elected officials that you can support? Are there things that you can do right here and right now? Because that's what really matters. It all matters.
Well, the maxim of that from a philosophical standpoint is, if every single one of us did that, yes, we would make a change.
Absolutely.
I cannot change Washington.
Right.
But I can change my community. Yeah. I do believe that.
And enough of us together can change Washington. Yes. But it's like you said, it's contagious. This feeling of, I'm insignificant, I can't make any change. And then everybody around you feels similarly. Movements, big social movements, have been made by regular, everyday people. It's not usually the elected officials. It's people like Martin Luther King Jr., who was a brilliant
smaller,
man.
Rosa Parks.
Yeah, smaller, right? Yeah, of course.
Let's go nano.
Right? Yeah, we can go even more. Look at Greta Thunberg, for instance. She, age-wise is or was a child. And look at the impact that she has had. Yeah. And that's because people are listening to her. They believe in her message, and they want to support the movement. They want to be a part of this movement.
Well, and you're always going to find the group that, and I think this is sort of radical acceptance. It's, yes, that is happening. And what can I do? Yeah. What am I empowered to do? What can I use? What little resource? And again, this takes privilege, but even within that, because again, I think that is a responsibility. I'm not asking the single mom who's dealing with a ton of shit.
We're talking about equity here.
Equity. That should not be her job to do. We should be collectively working towards supporting that system. Yes. But again, I think it's it's social justice, and it's equity, like you said, and it's making sure that, I think these, I'm going to get a little more meta here. They're counting on your apathy.
Yes.
They benefit.
Right.
And guess who else benefits? Big Pharma. Yep. You're depressed about your food, which is making you sick. Yep. I'm going off on a tangent.
No, it's cyclical now.
It's cyclical, and you're going to invest in these places, and they don't care. Yep. Because they're wanting what they want now. Yep. So they're fine if you don't care. That makes them money.
Yep, absolutely. No, those are all good points. And you made me think of something that I want to finish with here, but we're not quite done yet, because what I want to talk about is that everybody remember the pandemic? Not that long ago, right? But something as shitty as it was, something amazing happened during the pandemic. We weren't flying as much. We weren't driving as much. We weren't using our waterways as frequently. And lo and behold, nature started to rebound. Our ozone started to rebound. Our air quality started to improve. Our water quality. You could see, I think it was a mountain in India, was it? I can't remember which one in particular. Always shrouded in smog. For the first time ever during the pandemic, you could actually see this frickin' mountain. To me, if that doesn't say something, I don't know what does. This is from the National Institute of Health. In terms of harmful emissions, the lockdowns reduced the emissions of nitrous oxide by 20 to 30% in China, Italy, France, Spain, and by 77.3% in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Similarly, the particulate matter level had been reduced from 5 to 15% in Western Europe to 200% in New Delhi, India, which in turn has enhanced the air quality in a never-seen manner in recent times. In some places, such as New York, CO2 emissions were also reduced by 5 to 10%. The water quality in several polluted areas had also been remarkably enhanced. For example, the dissolved oxygen content in the Ganga River, is that how you say it?
I think so. I think it's like the Ganga. It's like the dirtiest river in the world.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
I think people put ashes and
they
dead in
they
it
burn
and
their
stuff.
dead, yeah.
It's kind of for everything.
Yeah.
But
and your laundry.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so dangerous about it, right? You're bathing in it, you're doing all types of stuff in it. Yeah, but you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So in this place, the dissolved oxygen content had increased by 80%. Traffic congestion had also been reduced worldwide, and in some areas it had been reduced by 50%, such as New York and LA, where it tends to be the worst. Please watch this documentary, The Year the Earth Changed, from a Root, and this is from a Root and Vine article associated with that, narrated by everyone's favorite nature documentarian, narrator David Attenborough. Sir David Attenborough.
Oh, is he Sir?
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh, yeah, he is. The Year the Earth Changed showcases the dramatic and surprising transformation our planet's ecosystem experienced while in its dominant species activity came to a sudden halt. Within days, cities in the U.S. experienced the best air quality that had in 40 years. Hidden for decades by smog in India, this is it. After just 12 days, the Himalayas were visible from 200 kilometers away. 6 months after the start of the pandemic lockdown, the Ganges River saw 80% increase in oxygen levels. Again, repetitive, but you get it, right? So
we need to hear
it.
it. Because I don't think we learned that much. And that's what, like, remember that feeling in the pandemic?
Yeah.
And I think this was before George Floyd was murdered, but it was this feeling of maybe in our lifetime, we're going to be the generation that turns it around.
Yeah.
I remember having that feeling, which then very quickly went pew.
Yeah. Now I'm hopeless.
Yeah, but I think that was, to me, the most promising thing of the pandemic, that I'm really sad when that's not been monetized better.
we have such short memories
as
human beings, and particularly in America. And you know, if you weren't paying attention, and also if you weren't paying attention and you weren't aware of these incredible improvements and changes that were taking place associated with us not driving as much and not flying as much, you know, it's incredible.
Well, we have to see the earth as a living thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think we're so disconnected from ourselves and nature. That's my whole practice is based off of getting people outside.
Yeah.
And most people don't understand that.
Right.
It's like, oh, you don't have an office? It's like, no, nature's my office.
Right.
It gets you in a state of mind where it might take me the whole session to get you there. I can do it right away. It'll happen naturally without even you trying.
Yeah.
Isn't that worth more money to you?
I agree. But I understand the awe-inspiring, compelling power of nature.
Yeah.
I'm open to it. I've been open to it for a long time, especially as a child of trauma. It is the way that I can connect with God or spirituality, call it what you will. And what's ironic to me about people not fucking getting it is the pandemic essentially was nature trying to kill our asses.
Yes.
The earth was like, fuck y'all. Like,
yes.
Let's create some disease to get rid of some of you, you know? So respecting nature and also understanding like the raw intensity and homicidal nature that nature has.
Yes.
You know, it's like, you better respect this bitch.
Yes.
You know, this is our mother.
Yes.
For all intents and purposes. And I don't mean that from some airy-fairy perspective, but we all came from this earth.
Yes.
And from this earth,
and we're all going to return.
We're all going to return until it blows up into a fiery ball. No, that's not going to happen because here is what you can do to make those little changes.
Tell me.
Look, Carolyn, help me out. Bike to work if you can. Lots of people bike in the city. I'm a little scared to bike.
I am
too. I have the time to do it.
Well, we should learn.
Yes, we should.
I'll look
definitely
like Kermit the Frog when he's biking. I'll have to get my boyfriend's chamois butter.
Oh my God. I grew up riding bikes. I love it, but I also don't feel super safe doing it in the city. But if you do feel comfortable doing it, hey, I work with a woman who right now I think is 5 or 6 months pregnant. She still bikes to work.
That's awesome.
She still bikes every day. She is fit. She's doing great. She's having a good pregnancy. You can telecommute if you're permitted to do so. That is one of the reasons why so many of us are holding on to our 2 remaining days of telecommute, because we understand also from a time perspective, spending that time in your car, especially people are commuting from farther, especially if the city has jobs, good jobs. People come from all over the Bay Area to the city. But what are we doing to our environment when we spend 2 to 3 hours a day in our car? Because there aren't public transportation options for us. There aren't telecommute options for us. So if you can do it, do it. Reduce food waste by meal planning. I've started doing this. I cooked for 5 of us last night, and it was the perfect amount of food. I'm finally getting to a point where I've got it, because oftentimes leftovers go to waste. And you can compost it, yeah, but try to reduce. That leads me to compost. Bring your own coffee cup to the coffee place.
Doing that.
Yeah, or make your own coffee.
Just keeps it hotter, too.
It does. It does. Buy dry goods in bulk. This is like Rainbow we were talking about. I've started buying all my lima beans and shit.
Actually less money.
It is less money.
It's actually less money and it's better quality.
Yep. Less money, less plastic. It's all good. Grow some of your own veggies.
I tried and damn you raccoons.
Oh yeah, you got wildlife. We need to put raccoon cages around your shit.
I'll fucking piss on everything. What was it? Oh, coyote piss. Coyotes eat shit too, and you have deer up in Sonoma.
But not here. In the city, well, we have opossums out here and we had raccoons, and we have rats. It's fucking nuts, man. It's like
they're hungry
too. If they're cold, let them in. If you're cold, they're cold. You can, and even when I lived in apartments, if I had like a little balcony, I would grow some stuff on it.
And it's very therapeutic.
It is therapeutic.
All of this is therapy.
It is
free.
I put my hands in soil. In fact, Shannon's partner, Nikki, she told me when she read the bones for me a few years back, and she's like, girl, start gardening. She's like, get your hands in some soil. And I only recently started doing it.
It's true.
You know, my upstairs looks like a goddamn jungle. But just putting my hands in the soil, because you know why? When you watch Kiss the Ground, you find out how many organisms are alive in good soil. It's cool. It has an energy to it. Now I really sound like a fucking hippie.
No.
Eat less meat. If you can eat less meat, do it. If you have the financial capability to buy, organic meat, grass-fed meat.
Well, and now even Burger King has Impossible Burgers.
Right?
And again, these are corporate places, but they have a good intention. Or God, I hope they do.
Well, they're trying to get to a larger audience for sure. Yeah. And be careful too. If you're going to not eat meat, if you're going to do meat substitutes, go for stuff with minimal processing, because a lot of that stuff isn't necessarily good for you.
Yes.
So you have to think about the impact on you, not just on the planet. So, buy used shit. That's my favorite thing, right?
Yes. Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah. I buy everything used. I've been making a ton of videos on TikTok of all of the antiques I've been buying on Facebook Marketplace. Soon I'm going to do one of all the clothes, especially the designer shoes that I bought. Yeah. Because I can't afford, a piece of clothing that was made ethically, not in a sweatshop. It's like $50 t-shirt, but I can buy it used for $20 and it's like barely used. So you can do stuff like that. Change your investments. Investors really should move out of fossil fuels, says Michael Brune, executive director of U.S. environmental organization, the Sierra Club. Not only is it morally risky, it's economically risky. It's not going to be around forever. Reduce your plastic consumption if you can. And if you can wait, don't rush ship. And by the way, just buy less shit. So,
giving you guys a lot of homework.
We're giving you a lot
of work, Jen. This is going to be hard.
But we want you to feel good about yourself and what you can do to minimize your personal impact on the degradation of the planet. Yeah. And like you said, if we all do something, that adds up.
And that feels empowering. And again, I joked when I said it's hard. It's not hard. It's unfamiliar.
Right.
We have all been programmed, whether you want to believe it or not, in some form.
We have.
There's something you're doing that you don't really know why you do it, but you do it.
Right.
So where I see a lot of this when people say, yes, it is hard. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Being an adult is really hard.
It is hard. And
I'm so sorry.
It is really, well, sorry, being an adult sucks. But learning something new and deviating from the way that you've always done it is hard.
But it builds confidence.
It does.
It's unfamiliar.
Yep.
But it feels really good. doing it, and you will reap the benefits. Like I said, all of the things you're listing are things, the only thing that's missing off there is sleep. Yeah. These are all things that I would tell someone from a mental health perspective will change your health.
Yeah. Food is medicine.
Yeah. Yes.
And the better the quality of food that you put into your body, and I know this sounds really airy-fairy, but even when we were growing up poor, like we couldn't buy the best stuff, but I always ate multi-grains, fruits, vegetables, lean protein. And those are, skills that I learned for life. Yeah. And now that's how I feed my family. And I feel great.
You do. It won't, it may not help, but it certainly won't hurt.
Right. Exactly. I agree. And final thought on this, you guys, it's like when you start to feel hopeless, whenever I start to feel hopeless, I think of this story. And
I love this story.
I don't know where it came from or who wrote it, but it's burned in my memory and it always gives me hope. If you've heard it, this will sound familiar. There was a girl walking down the beach and she sees a dude. All these starfish have washed up on the beach. They're alive, but there's so many. There's hundreds and hundreds. And she sees this man just one at a time throwing them back in. Or maybe it was the reverse, right? Maybe it's the little girl because children are helpful. And it was a crotchety old man who was like, what are you doing? And, throwing them back in one by one. And in this case, we'll say the man is throwing them, whatever. And the little girl says, why are you doing that? You can't possibly save them all. And he picks up a starfish and he holds it up and he says, but to this one, this makes all the difference in the world.
But I can save this one.
I can save this one. It's very Oscar Schindler. But he was right about that,
It's true.
We don't try to do everything. Yeah. Don't put so much on yourself that it feels impossible. Insurmountable, etc. Little by little, because it does matter. It matters to all of us.
I agree.
Keep trying, motherfuckers.
Yay!
You can do this. We can all do this. The only way we're going to save this planet is if we work together. And you know what? You got to start small. You got to start somewhere.
I'll try.
So go compost.
I'm going to go bike.
Yes. We love you all. Next week, Jen and Carolyn will be ranting and raving about student loans. That's going to be fun. So tune in next week. And don't forget to like us, give us 5 stars, all those awesome things. Comment. Yeah.
Follow. Share us with your friends.
We want to hear from you. And that's it. Yeah. Have a great night.
All right.
Farewell. Bye.